Japanese general vanished after Okinawa. 79 years later, hidden Thai mountain villa discovered. March 17, 2024, 14:37 local time, Chiang Mai Province, Thailand. The construction crew working on the new mountain resort development in the Doi Suthep Pui National Park region had no idea they were about to unearth one of World War II's most closely guarded secrets. The excavator's bucket bit into the hillside at coordinates 8,125 degrees N, 98, 9,208 degrees E, approximately 47 kilometers northwest of Chiang Mai city center, when the machine suddenly lurched downward. The operator, 34-year-old Somchai Pradeep, killed the engine immediately. The ground had given way, revealing not soil or rock but concrete. Within hours, the site was cordoned off. Dr. Anjali Sirasawat, a forensic archaeologist from Chiang Mai University's Department of Historical Studies, arrived with her team at 18:15. What they found defied all historical records. The concrete structure was a reinforced bunker-style villa, built into the mountainside with remarkable sophistication. The entrance had been deliberately sealed with 3 feet of poured concrete and disguised with decades of accumulated earth and vegetation. Carbon dating of the concrete samples would later confirm construction between 1946 and 1948, but it was what lay inside that would send shockwaves through the international historical community. The interior consisted of 6 rooms, perfectly preserved by the sealed environment. The main chamber contained furniture of Japanese design, a low writing desk, sleeping mats, and storage chests. On the desk, beneath a layer of dust so thick it had formed a crust, investigators found a leather-bound journal. The pages were yellowed but legible. The entries were written in Japanese, dated from August 1946 to March 1951. But it was the military identification documents found in a locked steel box that made Dr. Sirasawat's hands tremble as she photographed them. The name on the papers: Lieutenant General Takeshi Nakamura, Imperial Japanese Army, 32nd Infantry Division. Date of birth: April 8, 1898. Military serial number: IJA 3274892. The photographs in the documents matched portraits found throughout the villa. A stern-faced man with sharp eyes and a distinctive scar running from his left temple to his jawline, the result of shrapnel from a 1944 battle in the Philippines. The problem was simple and staggering. Lieutenant General Takeshi Nakamura had been officially declared killed in action on June 22, 1945, during the Battle of Okinawa. His name was inscribed on the memorial wall at Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo. His family had held a funeral service in Kyoto in November 1945. The official Imperial Japanese Army records, declassified in 1978, explicitly stated that Nakamura had died leading a final banzai charge against American forces near the Mabuni Caves in the southern Okinawa Peninsula. Yet here, in a hidden villa carved into a Thai mountainside, was evidence that he had lived for at least 6 more years after his supposed death. Dr. Sirasawat's team found more than just documents. In the bedroom, a footlocker contained Japanese military medals, including the Order of the Golden Kite, 4th class, an award Nakamura had received in 1943. There were civilian clothes sized for a man approximately 175 centimeters tall, Nakamura's exact height according to military records. In the kitchen area, they discovered sake bottles with labels dating from 1947 to 1950, and dried foodstuffs of both Japanese and Thai origin. Most damning of all was a set of photographs found in a wooden box beneath the floorboards. The pictures showed a man bearing an unmistakable resemblance to General Nakamura, dressed in civilian clothing, standing in front of Thai temples and markets. In one photograph, he stood beside a Thai woman and 2 young children. The back of this photo bore an inscription in Japanese: "My new family, December 1948, safe at last." By March 19, 2024, International news agencies had picked up the story. The Japanese Ministry of Defense announced they would be sending representatives to examine the evidence. Forensic teams from 3 countries converged on the site. The question that had been buried for 79 years was now explosive. How had a high-ranking Japanese general, supposedly killed in one of the Pacific War's bloodiest battles, escaped to Thailand and lived in hiding for years? The investigation that followed would uncover an escape network of stunning complexity, involving forged documents, stolen military resources, bribed officials from 3 different nations, and a secret route that had been used by dozens of Japanese military figures desperate to avoid war crimes tribunals. If you want to see what investigators found as they pieced together General Nakamura's incredible journey from the caves of Okinawa to the mountains of Thailand, hit the like button and subscribe. This is a story the history books never told, until now. Lieutenant General Takeshi Nakamura was born on April 8, 1898, in the Higashiyama district of Kyoto, Japan, to a family with 3 generations of military service. His father, Colonel Hiroshi Nakamura, had fought in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904–1905. His grandfather had served in the Imperial Army during the Meiji Restoration. Military service wasn't just expected in the Nakamura family, it was destiny. Takeshi entered the Imperial Japanese Army Academy in Tokyo in April 1915, at the age of 17. His service record, preserved in the National Archives of Japan and cross-referenced with declassified U.S. military intelligence files from 1946, paints a picture of an exceptionally capable and methodical officer. He graduated 3rd in his class in March 1919, earning immediate assignment to the prestigious 1st Imperial Guards Division. Unlike many of his contemporaries who rose through political connections and family influence, Nakamura advanced through demonstrated competence in logistics and strategic planning. His first notable assignment came in 1931, during the Mukden incident in Manchuria. As a captain serving under General Shiju Hanjo, Nakamura was responsible for coordinating supply lines for the Kwantung Army. His ability to move troops and materiel efficiently through hostile territory earned him recognition and promotion to major by 1933. By 1937, at the outbreak of the Second Sino-Japanese War, Nakamura had achieved the rank of colonel. He commanded the 214th Infantry Regiment during the Battle of Shanghai, where his tactical innovations in urban warfare, particularly the use of small, mobile units for street-to-street combat, became textbook material at the Army War College. He was wounded twice during this campaign, once by shrapnel that left the characteristic scar on his face, and once by a rifle bullet that grazed his right shoulder. Those who served under him described Nakamura as demanding but fair, a perfectionist who expected absolute precision from his subordinates, but also ensured they were well supplied and properly equipped. Unlike the stereotype of the fanatical Japanese officer willing to sacrifice men needlessly, Nakamura was known for careful planning that minimized casualties when possible. This reputation would prove crucial to his eventual escape. The loyalty his men felt toward him was genuine and deep. In 1942, Nakamura was promoted to Major General and given command of the 32nd Infantry Division, a unit of approximately 18,000 men. The division saw action in the Philippines Campaign of 1940–41945, where Nakamura's defensive strategies at the Battle of Luzon inflicted significant casualties on American forces while preserving much of his division's combat effectiveness. U.S. Army intelligence reports from this period, declassified in 1989, specifically identified Nakamura as a highly capable and dangerous enemy commander who showed exceptional skill in defensive operations and strategic withdrawal. It was this skill at strategic withdrawal that would ultimately save his life. Nakamura's personal life was marked by both devotion and tragedy. In 1925, he married Yuki Tanaka, the daughter of a prominent Kyoto silk merchant. They had 3 children, 2 daughters, Keiko, born 1926, and Sachiko, born 1929, and a son, Akira, born 1932. Photographs from the family archive, discovered by researchers in 2018, show a man who, despite his military bearing, displayed genuine warmth toward his children. In one photo from 1938, he sits on the floor of their Kyoto home, teaching young Akira how to play shogi. The war took everything from him. On March 9, 1945, U.S. B-29 Superfortress bombers conducted Operation Meeting House, the single deadliest air raid in human history, targeting Tokyo. While Nakamura's family lived in Kyoto, his wife Yuki and son Akira had been visiting her sister in Tokyo's Sumida district. They were among the estimated 100,000 civilians killed that night, when incendiary bombs created a firestorm that reached temperatures of 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Nakamura received the news on March 11th, while stationed in Okinawa preparing defensive positions. According to the diary of his aide-de-camp, Captain Noboru Ito, a document that survived the war and is now held in the Military History Archives at the National Institute for Defense Studies in Tokyo, Nakamura showed no outward emotion upon hearing of his family's death. He simply closed his eyes for 30 seconds, then returned to studying maps of Okinawa's defensive positions. But something had broken inside him. His daughters, Keiko and Sachiko, survived only because they had remained in Kyoto. They were 21 and 18 years old respectively when they became orphans. Keiko's letters to her father, written in March and April 1945 and discovered in a sealed trunk in Kyoto in 2003, reveal her desperate concern for his mental state. "Father," she wrote on April 2, 1945, "please do not throw your life away in grief. Sachiko and I need you to come home. Mother would want you to survive." By April 1945, as the Americans prepared for the invasion of Okinawa, Nakamura had been on the island for 3 months. He commanded approximately 11,000 men of the 32nd Division, tasked with defending the southern portion of the island. The Japanese High Command had ordered that Okinawa be defended to the last man, a suicide mission disguised as strategy. Every officer knew the battle was unwinnable. The question was not whether they would die, but how many Americans they could kill before their inevitable end. But Nakamura had already decided he would not die in Okinawa. What made General Nakamura unusual among his peers was his extensive network of contacts beyond the military sphere. His wife's family had been wealthy merchants with trading connections throughout Asia. Before the war, Nakamura had accompanied his father-in-law on business trips to French Indochina, Thailand, and Burma. He spoke passable Thai and had a working knowledge of French. He understood the region's geography, culture, and most importantly, its networks of corruption and commerce. Moreover, Nakamura had access to resources most officers did not. As a division commander, he controlled logistics, supply distribution, and financial resources. In the chaos of a losing war, vast quantities of military supplies, gold reserves meant for paying troops, and confiscated valuables from occupied territories were under his direct authority. U.S. Army intelligence estimates from post-war investigations suggested that Nakamura had access to approximately 200 kilograms of gold bullion, ostensibly for emergency operational expenses. By May 1945, as the Battle of Okinawa raged with horrific intensity, Nakamura was secretly executing a parallel plan. While publicly ordering banzai charges and defensive stands, he was quietly organizing his own extraction. He was not the first Japanese officer to contemplate escape, but he would prove to be one of the most successful. His plan required 3 things: complete chaos to cover his disappearance, trusted accomplices willing to help him fake his death, and a route to safety that bypassed the American naval blockade. By June 1945, as the battle entered its final, apocalyptic phase, Nakamura had secured all 3. The official history books would record that Lieutenant General Takeshi Nakamura died heroically in combat on June 22, 1945. But the truth, hidden in a mountain villa in Thailand for nearly 8 decades, told a very different story. June 18, 1945, 04:30 hours, Mabuni Command Cave, southern Okinawa. General Nakamura stood in the main chamber of the underground command complex, studying a map by candlelight. Above ground, American artillery thundered continuously. The 32nd Division's defensive perimeter had collapsed. Of his original 11,000 men, fewer than 800 remained combat effective. The American 7th Infantry Division was advancing from the north. The 1st Marine Division was closing from the east. The 96th Infantry Division had broken through the western defenses. The end was perhaps 72 hours away. But Nakamura's attention was focused on a different map, one that showed not defensive positions but escape routes. Captain Noboru Ito entered the chamber at 04:47. General, the artillery preparation has begun. The Americans will assault at dawn. His voice carried the resignation of a man who expected to be dead within days. Nakamura looked up from his map. Ito, how many civilians remain in the caves at Minetagawa? The question seemed bizarre given the circumstances. Ito hesitated. Perhaps 200, sir, mostly women and children. They're trapped between our lines and the Americans. And our submarine. Nakamura's voice was barely above a whisper. Ito glanced at the entrance to ensure they were alone. I-58 will be in position off the southern coast at 23:00 hours on June 21st. She will remain submerged at coordinates 26:0893 degrees N, 127, 7,589 degrees E for exactly 4 hours. After that, he didn't need to finish. After that, the submarine would leave, with or without passengers. I-58 was a Type B submarine that had been conducting supply runs to Okinawa since April. Lieutenant Commander Machitsura Hashimoto, the submarine's captain, was an old friend from Nakamura's academy days. More importantly, Hashimoto was pragmatic. He understood that Japan had lost the war. He also understood that approximately 15 kilograms of gold bullion, promised by Nakamura for special cargo transport, would secure his family's future in whatever Japan emerged from the ashes. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. During the chaos of the battle's final collapse, Nakamura would stage his own death, then make his way to the southern coastline where a small boat would take him to the submarine's rendezvous point. The submarine would transport him to French Indochina, now in the confused transition between Japanese occupation and French colonial return. From there, he would disappear into Southeast Asia. But staging a convincing death required a body. June 19, 1945, 11:15 hours. American naval gunfire had intensified. The entire southern tip of Okinawa shook with near-continuous explosions. In the command cave, Nakamura assembled his inner circle, Captain Ito, Major Kenichi Sato, his logistics officer, and Lieutenant Hiroshi Yamamoto, his communications officer. These 3 men had been with him since the Philippines. Their loyalty was absolute. "Gentlemen," Nakamura began, "I am giving you a choice. You may die here with honor as the Emperor commands, or you may help me disappear and in doing so save your own lives." The silence stretched for 30 seconds. Outside, a shell struck close enough to rain dust from the cave ceiling. Major Sato spoke first. "Sir, if you die here, your daughters become orphans. If you live, your family has a future. I lost my son at Iwo Jima. I will not die for nothing." Ito and Yamamoto nodded agreement. They were all dead men unless they tried something desperate. Nakamura unrolled a map on the table. "Then this is what we will do." The plan had been forming in Nakamura's mind for weeks. Among the civilians sheltering in the southern caves was a man named Takeshi Fujimoto, a 47-year-old schoolteacher from Naha. Purely by coincidence, Fujimoto bore a remarkable physical resemblance to General Nakamura, same height, similar build, same approximate age. Both men had the same blood type, B positive. Fujimoto even had a scar on his face, though not identical to Nakamura's. Fujimoto had been wounded 3 days earlier when American artillery struck near his shelter. The wounds were mortal, shrapnel in the abdomen, infection setting in. The civilian medic said he had perhaps 2 days to live, maybe less. What happened next was documented in Major Sato's diary, discovered by his grandson in 2007, and subsequently donated to the Okinawa Prefectural Peace Memorial Museum. The diary makes for grim reading. June 20th, 1945, 02:30 hours. Nakamura, accompanied by Ito and Sato, visited Fujimoto in the civilian cave. The schoolteacher was delirious with fever, drifting in and out of consciousness. Nakamura knelt beside him. "Fujimoto-san, I am General Nakamura. Can you hear me?" The schoolteacher's eyes focused briefly. "General, yes." "You are dying, within hours. I'm sorry, there is nothing we can do." Fujimoto nodded weakly. "I know. Your death can save lives. 5 lives, myself and my officers. If you agree, we will dress you in my uniform. When you die, you will die as me. My death will be recorded. You will be honored as a general. Your family will receive my pension, my property in Kyoto, and compensation from my personal funds." Nakamura paused. "It is more than the army will give them for a school teacher." What Nakamura didn't say was that he had little choice. If Fujimoto refused, the man would die anyway, and Nakamura would need to find another solution. But offering dignity and compensation to the dying man's family made the proposition more palatable. Fujimoto was silent for a long moment. Finally, he whispered, "My wife, Hanako, my daughters Yuriko and Noriko, they are in the Nakagusuku caves. Promise me your pension." "You have my word, every yen." "Then I agree." Fujimoto died at 06:17 hours on June 20th, 1945. Major Sato recorded the exact time. They immediately dressed the body in Nakamura's full general's uniform, complete with medals and identification papers. Sato carefully arranged the body in a heroic pose, sword in hand, as though the general had fallen leading a final charge. Nakamura himself changed into the uniform of a dead sergeant, Kenji Matsuda, who had been killed the previous day. The sergeant had been approximately the same size. Nakamura kept the sergeant's identification papers and tags. June 21st, 1945, 14:00 hours. The Americans launched their final assault. Artillery fire reached its crescendo. Infantry advanced on all fronts. The remaining Japanese defenders fought with suicidal desperation. In the chaos, nobody noticed when Sergeant Matsuda and 3 other soldiers slipped away from the defensive lines. Nakamura, Ito, Sato, and Yamamoto made their way south through a network of caves and tunnels that Nakamura had carefully mapped over the previous months. They carried minimal supplies: water, dried rice, emergency rations, and 4 rucksacks of gold bars, approximately 60 kilograms in total, 15 per man. At 17:30, as they emerged from a cave opening approximately 2 kilometers from their starting point, an American artillery shell struck the hillside 40 meters away. The explosion threw them all to the ground. Yamamoto screamed. Shrapnel had torn through his left leg. There was no time for proper medical treatment. Sato applied a tourniquet while Ito administered a morphine injection. They fashioned a crude stretcher and continued moving. June 21st, 1945, 21:00 hours. They reached the coastline near Cayenne Point as darkness fell. The area was supposedly secured by American forces, but in the confusion of battle, small pockets of Japanese resistance remained. More importantly, small pockets of no man's land existed where neither side had complete control. hidden in a sea cave at coordinates 26,0812 degrees N, 127, 7,634 degrees E, was a small fishing boat that Major Sato had secretly moved into position 5 days earlier. It was a typical Okinawan sabani boat, approximately 6 meters long wooden construction, with a small sail and oars. In the darkness and rain that had begun falling at 20:15, it would be nearly invisible. At 22:45, they launched the boat. Yamamoto was barely conscious, kept quiet only by morphine. The sea was rough, with swells reaching 2 meters. None of them were experienced sailors. For the next hour, they fought the waves, rowing desperately toward the rendezvous coordinates. June 21, 1945, 23:53 hours. Lieutenant Commander Hashimoto watched through I-58's periscope, searching the dark waters. The submarine had been in position since 22:55. 4 hours, they had agreed. 4 hours and no more. Every minute on the surface was a risk. At 23:53, the lookout spotted something, a dark shape on the waves, barely visible even with night vision optics. A small boat, 4 figures visible. I-58 surfaced at 23:57. The small boat came alongside at 00:03, June 22nd. Sailors helped the 4 men aboard. Yamamoto had to be carried. He was unconscious and bleeding through the tourniquet. At 00:09, I-58 submerged. The Sabani boat was cut loose and left to drift. By dawn, it would be found by American sailors, empty and bloodstained, just another piece of war debris. June 22, 1945, 11:30 hours, Mabuni Command Cave. American soldiers from the 7th Infantry Division entered the command cave. The last organized resistance had ended 90 minutes earlier. The cave was filled with bodies, soldiers and civilians, suicide victims and combat casualties. In the main command chamber, they found what appeared to be a Japanese general in full uniform, lying near a table covered with maps. He had apparently died from shrapnel wounds. His identification papers confirmed his identity: Lieutenant General Takeshi Nakamura, Imperial Japanese Army, 32nd Infantry Division. The body was photographed for intelligence purposes, then removed for burial with other high-ranking Japanese casualties. The photographs were filed in the U.S. Army's intelligence archives with the notation: Enemy General, KIA, 22 June 1945, Mabuni, Okinawa. Circumstances: died during final defensive stand. The battle officially ended the same day. June 22, 1945, was recorded as the date of General Nakamura's death in action. The report was transmitted to Imperial Japanese Army headquarters. From there, it eventually reached his daughters in Kyoto. Keiko and Sachiko held a funeral service on July 14, 1945, at Nanzenji Temple in Kyoto. The service was attended by 73 people. There was no body. It had been buried with military honors by the Americans in Okinawa. The sisters placed their father's photograph beside their mother's and brothers on the family altar. But 3,000 kilometers away, their father was very much alive, beginning a journey that would take him through some of the most dangerous territory in Asia. March 18, 2024, 09:00 hours, Chiang Mai University Forensic Laboratory. Dr. Anjali Sirasawa carefully removed the leather journal from its protective evidence bag. The room's atmosphere was controlled, temperature 18 degrees C, humidity 45%, to prevent further degradation of the documents. Her team had spent the night securing the villa site and beginning the delicate process of cataloging evidence. The journal was remarkable in its preservation. The leather cover had protected the pages from moisture and insects. The entries were written in careful, precise Japanese characters, the handwriting of an educated man accustomed to military reports. Dr. Sirasawa had called in Professor Yukiko Tanaka from Tokyo Metropolitan University, a specialist in World War II-era Japanese military documents, to assist with translation and authentication. Professor Tanaka arrived at 13:45, traveling on an emergency visa expedited by the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. By 15:00, she had confirmed what Dr. Shirasawa already suspected. The handwriting matched verified samples of General Nakamura's writing held in military archives in Tokyo. The calligraphy style is distinctive, Professor Tanaka explained, pointing to specific character formations. Nakamura had classical training in his youth. See how he forms this kanji. The brush stroke order and pressure patterns are consistent with samples from his military correspondence in 1944 and 1945. But handwriting analysis was only the beginning. The journal entries themselves contained information that could be cross-referenced against historical records. The first entry was dated August 14, 1946. 1 year, 1 month, and 23 days since Okinawa. I am alive. I should not be alive. By rights, I should have died with my men. But I am alive, and I am safe, and I am a coward. Keiko and Sachiko believe I am dead. It is better this way. They can honor my memory as a soldier who died serving the emperor. They need not know their father is a deserter who bought his life with gold. The entry continued with a description of the villa's construction, which had just been completed. Nakamura wrote that he had employed local Thai laborers through intermediaries, never revealing his true identity. The cost had been 8 bars of gold, approximately 10 kilograms. He described the location as remote enough for safety, accessible enough for supplies. Dr. Shirasawa's team cross-referenced this with land ownership records from the Chiang Mai Provincial Archives. They discovered that in July 1946, a property deed had been registered for this exact location under the name Takeshi Watanabe, described as a Japanese merchant. The purchase price had been paid in gold. March 19, 2024, Japanese Ministry of Defense, Tokyo. The news from Thailand created an immediate crisis. If General Nakamura had survived, questions would arise about wartime conduct, potential war crimes, and the authenticity of other death records. Defense Minister Yasuhiro Suzuki convened an emergency meeting of the Historical Records Investigation Committee. Retired Colonel Masahiro Endo, now 78 years old and serving as a military historian, was tasked with reviewing Nakamura's service record for any indication of war crimes. By international law, there was no statute of limitations on war crimes. If Nakamura had committed atrocities and then escaped justice, it would be a national embarrassment. What Colonel Endo discovered was complicated. Nakamura's division had been involved in combat operations in China and the Philippines where civilian casualties occurred. However, there were no specific documented incidents linking Nakamura personally to war crimes. Unlike some Japanese officers who had been tried and executed by Allied tribunals, Nakamura appeared to have been a conventional military commander who followed the standard, though brutal, rules of engagement. He was, Colonel Endo reported on March 21, 2024, a professional soldier, not a war criminal. His escape was illegal and dishonorable, but he wasn't fleeing prosecution for specific atrocities. He was simply trying to survive. This distinction would prove important to the investigation's ethical dimensions. March 22, 2024, Forensic DNA Laboratory, Bangkok. The most definitive proof came from genetic analysis. Among the items found in the villa was a hairbrush containing multiple hair strands with follicles still attached. Dr. Priya Chandra, a forensic DNA specialist, extracted usable DNA from 3 separate samples. The challenge was finding comparison samples. Nakamura's daughters, Keiko and Sachiko, were both deceased. Keiko had died in 1998, Sachiko in 2011. However, both had left descendants. After considerable diplomatic effort, researchers contacted Nakamura's grandson, 61-year-old Hiroshi Tanaka, who lived in Osaka. Initially, Hiroshi was skeptical. "My grandfather died in Okinawa," he insisted during the first phone call with investigators. "My mother mourned him her entire life. She visited his memorial at Yasukuni Shrine every year until she physically couldn't anymore. You're telling me that was a lie?" But he agreed to provide a DNA sample. The results, completed on April 2, 2024, were unambiguous. The hair samples from the villa showed a 99.7% probability of being from Hiroshi's maternal grandfather. The mitochondrial DNA analysis confirmed a direct maternal line connection. The DNA had passed from Nakamura to his daughter Keiko to her son Hiroshi. "There is no doubt," Dr. Chandra stated in her official report. "The man who lived in this villa was genetically related to the Nakamura family line. Combined with the documentary evidence, the probability that this was Lieutenant General Takeshi Nakamura is effectively 100%. When Hiroshi received the news, he sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, he said, "I want to read the journal. I want to know why he abandoned us." April 5, 2024. Document analysis, multiple locations. The investigation expanded to multiple countries as researchers attempted to trace Nakamura's journey from Okinawa to Thailand. The key to unlocking this mystery lay in the journal entries and a collection of documents found in a locked metal box beneath the villa's floorboards. The box contained a false identity card in the name of Takeshi Watanabe, issued in Saigon, French Indochina, dated September 3, 1945. The photograph showed Nakamura without his distinctive facial scar, apparently surgically removed or concealed with makeup. Banking documents from the Banque de l'Indochine in Saigon showing deposits totaling 75,000 French Indochinese piasters between September 1945 and March 1946. Currency conversion experts calculated this was roughly equivalent to 187 kilograms of gold at 1945 exchange rates, far more than the 60 kilograms Nakamura had carried from Okinawa. Transit documents showing travel from Saigon to Bangkok via train in April 1946. A Thai residence permit in the name of Watanabe, dated May 15, 1946. Photographs showing Nakamura/Watanabe at various locations, Saigon street scenes, Bangkok temples, and eventually the Thai countryside near Chiang Mai. Most remarkably, a collection of 23 letters, never mailed, addressed to "my daughters," or specifically to Keiko and Sachiko. These letters, dated from 1946 to 1950, revealed Nakamura's tormented conscience about his decision. One letter, dated November 3, 1948, read, "Keiko, Sachiko, today I learned that you both married. Keiko to a doctor, Sachiko to a university professor. Good men, I hope, men who can protect you. I watched from the shadows at your weddings. Yes, I was there, though you didn't know. I stood at the back of Nanzenjai Temple during Keiko's ceremony in June 1947. I stood outside the gate at Kiyomizudera during Sachiko's ceremony last month. I wanted so desperately to reveal myself, to embrace you both, to beg your forgiveness. But how could I? Father, we thought you died heroically in Okinawa, but actually you staged your death and fled like a coward. How could I put you through that shame? Better you remember me as a soldier than know me as a deserter." This letter was particularly significant because it could be cross-referenced. Researchers contacted the families and confirmed that Keiko had indeed married Dr. Masao Tanaka on June 21, 1947, at Nanzenjai Temple in Kyoto. Sachiko had married Professor Akiro Yamashita on October 17, 1948, at Kiyomizudera Temple, also in Kyoto. The dates matched Nakamura's letter exactly. Security camera footage obviously didn't exist in 1947, but the wedding registries did. In a remarkable piece of investigative work, Professor Tanaka reviewed the witness signatures from both ceremonies. At Keiko's wedding, one witness signed as Kenzo Watanabe. At Sachiko's wedding, A witness signed as Hideo Suzuki. Handwriting analysis suggested both signatures were written by the same person, and the writing style matched Nakamura's hand. He had been there. He had watched his daughters marry. They had never known. April 15, 2024, French Colonial Archives, Paris. To understand how Nakamura reached French Indochina and established his false identity, investigators needed to examine colonial-era records. Dr. Philippe Mercier, a historian specializing in World War II Southeast Asia, accessed archived files from the transitional period of 1945-1946, when French colonial authority was being re-established after Japanese occupation. What he found was evidence of massive institutional corruption and chaos. Between August and December 1945, thousands of Japanese military personnel were awaiting repatriation. French colonial officials, working with British occupation forces, were supposed to process these individuals systematically. In reality, the system was overwhelmed and riddled with bribery. Dr. Mercier discovered a telling document, a memo from French Colonel Jean-Baptiste Laurent, dated October 12, 1945, complaining that Japanese officers are regularly bribing their way out of internment camps. We suspect at least 40 individuals have obtained false papers and disappeared into the civilian population. Without adequate personnel and resources, we cannot prevent this. Submarine I-58's logs, partially preserved in Japanese naval archives, showed that the vessel arrived at Cam Ranh Bay on June 28, 1945, 6 days after leaving Okinawa. The entry noted disembarked 4 passengers, all wounded with no names listed. This was deliberate vagueness to protect all involved. From there, the trail went cold for 2 months until September, when Takeshi Watanabe suddenly appeared in Saigon with seemingly legitimate identity papers and substantial financial resources. The most likely explanation, pieced together from multiple sources, was that Nakamura spent July and August 1945 hidden in a safe house in Saigon's Japanese district, recovering from the ordeal of escape and planning his next moves. He had help. The question was, from whom? April 20, 2024, interview with Hideaki Sato, Tokyo. This question was partially answered when investigators tracked down 96-year-old Hideaki Sato, the son of Major Kenichi Sato, who had escaped Okinawa with Nakamura. Hideaki was 5 years old when his father disappeared in June 1945. The family had been told Major Sato died at Okinawa. But in 1953, when Hideaki was 13, something strange happened. A package arrived at the family home in Nagoya. Inside was 500,000 yen in cash, an enormous sum, and a letter written in his father's handwriting. Hideaki, I am alive, but I cannot come home. Use this money for university. Make me proud. Tell no one about this letter. I'm sorry. Your father. Hideaki had kept this secret for 71 years. Now, with investigators' questions, the pieces fell into place. Father must have been with the general, Hideaki said during the recorded interview on April 20, 2024. He must have survived too. Indeed, cross-referencing the villa's journal entries revealed mentions of Sato until December 1948, at which point Nakamura wrote, Sato has decided to return to Japan. Too dangerous, I told him, but he misses his son. He will travel via Burma and China, entering Japan through the northern ports where security is lighter. I gave him 20 bars of gold, enough to live comfortably and care for his family. Ito and Yamamoto remain with me. This suggested an entire network of escaped officers, not just Nakamura. If Sato returned to Japan in late 1948 or early 1949, it would explain how he sent money to his son in 1953. Further investigation revealed that Noboru Ito and Hiroshi Yamamoto, the other 2 officers, never returned to Japan. Ito's name appeared in Thai immigration records until 1954, after which he vanished. Yamamoto, who had been severely wounded during the escape, appeared to have died much sooner. A journal entry from October 1946 mentioned Yamamoto's grave near the Eastern Temple, likely referring to a Buddhist wat in the region. The investigation was revealing not just one escape, but multiple interconnected stories of survival, deception, and impossible choices. May 3, 2024, International War Crimes Documentation Center, The Hague. The discoveries in Thailand prompted broader investigation into post-war escape networks. Dr. Yuki Yamamoto, no relation to Lieutenant Yamamoto, a researcher specializing in post-war Japanese military dispersal, began correlating the Nakamura case with other suspected survivals. What emerged was evidence of a sophisticated, multinational network that helped Japanese military personnel escape Allied capture between 1945 and 1950. The network operated along three primary routes: the southern route through Southeast Asia, the China route through Manchuria and Northern Territories, and the Pacific route involving remote island sanctuaries. Nakamura had used the southern route, which offered several advantages. Southeast Asia in 1940, 51946 was in political chaos. French Indochina was transitioning from Japanese occupation back to French colonial rule, but the French infrastructure was weak. Vietnam was in the early stages of revolution against colonial rule. Thailand had been a Japanese ally during the war and maintained some sympathetic elements. Burma, Myanmar, was similarly unstable. Most importantly, these regions had established Japanese civilian populations, merchants, traders, and settlers who had lived there before and during the war. These communities provided cover for military personnel who could blend in with false identities. The network structure was discovered through analysis of the banking documents found in Nakamura's villa. His deposits at the Bank de l'Indochine were facilitated by a Japanese businessman named Katsuo Morimoto, who ran an import-export firm in Saigon. French colonial archives showed that Morimoto had been investigated in 1947 on suspicion of helping Japanese military personnel escape, but insufficient evidence was found to prosecute him. Morimoto died in 1978, but his business records were donated to a Saigon museum in 2003. When researchers examined these files in May 2024, they found coded references to special clients and discrete transactions involving gold purchases and document acquisitions between 1945 and 1949. Cross-referencing these dates with known movements of Japanese military personnel revealed a pattern. At least 47 Japanese officers who were officially recorded as killed in action or missing, presumed dead, in 1945, appeared to have made financial transactions in Southeast Asia between 1946 and 1950. Not all of these men were fleeing war crimes. Many, like Nakamura, were simply trying to survive. Japan in 1945 was devastated, occupied, and humiliated. Officers who returned home faced poverty, shame, and potential prosecution even for conventional military actions. Starting over with a new identity in Southeast Asia, funded by looted gold or military resources, offered a chance at life. The network operated through a chain of safe houses and contacts. Based on journal entries and travel documents, investigators reconstructed Nakamura's specific route. June 22-28, 1945, submarine transit from Okinawa to Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam. This 3,000-kilometer journey took 6 days, with the submarine running submerged during daylight hours to avoid Allied air patrols. Nakamura's journal entry from years later recalled this period. 6 days in that steel coffin, breathing recycled air, listening to depth charges in the distance. Lieutenant Yamamoto's leg turned gangrenous. Commander Hashimoto said, "We must amputate or Yamamoto would die. We did it in the torpedo room, using sake as antiseptic and a leather belt for Yamamoto to bite. He survived, barely." June 28, July 4, 1945. hidden in a safe house in Nha Trang, approximately 35 kilometers north of Cam Ranh Bay. The house was owned by a Japanese merchant named Akiro Takahashi, who operated a fishing business that served as cover for network activities. Nakamura paid 3 gold bars, approximately 3.75 kilograms, for 1 week of shelter, medical care, and introductions to the next link in the chain. July 5, August 15, 1945, transport via fishing boat to Saigon, then concealment in the Japanese merchant district. This period covered the Japanese surrender on August 15th. Nakamura's journal described listening to Emperor Hirohito's surrender broadcast from his hiding place. The emperor's voice was so thin, so human. I realized I had never actually heard him speak before. We fought and died for a voice we had never heard. When the broadcast ended, I felt nothing. Not grief, not shame, not relief, just emptiness. August 16, September 3, 1945. This crucial period was when Nakamura obtained his false identity papers as Takeshi Watanabe. The documents were sophisticated forgeries that would pass cursory inspection. They cost 15 gold bars, approximately 18.75 kilograms. The forger was never identified, but Nakamura's journal mentioned only the printer, suggesting a professional counterfeiter working within the network. September 4, 1945, March 1946, establishing legitimate presence in Saigon as a merchant. Nakamura opened a small trading business, buying and selling textiles, a business he knew from his late wife's family. The business was real, though modest. It provided documentation of legitimate activity and allowed him to convert gold into usable currency through carefully structured transactions. During this period, another critical event occurred. Nakamura had plastic surgery to remove or minimize his distinctive facial scar. The journal entry for November 7, 1945, described it. Found a French doctor willing to work for payment in gold. Dr. Marcel Fournier, skilled surgeon, no questions asked. 2 operations. The scar will never fully disappear, but it is much less recognizable now. Fournier says I should tell people I was injured in a vehicle accident. I paid him 4 bars of gold. He asked no questions about where a Japanese merchant obtained such wealth. Records from the Hôpital Graal in Saigon, discovered by Dr. Mercier in French colonial medical archives, confirmed that a Takeshi Watanabe received facial reconstruction surgery in November 1945. The surgeon's notes described repairing shrapnel scarring from war injury, which was technically accurate, though the context was deliberately obscured. April 1946, travel from Saigon to Bangkok via the newly reopened railway. The journey took 4 days, with stops in Phnom Penh and Aranyaprathet. Nakamura traveled with papers identifying him as a merchant seeking new business opportunities in Thailand. At the border, Thai officials were more interested in bribe money than scrutinizing documents. 500 piasters, about half a kilogram of gold's value, ensured swift passage. May-July 1946, establishing presence in Bangkok, then traveling north to Chiang Mai. This move was strategic. Bangkok had both Thai authorities and allied representatives monitoring for war criminals. Chiang Mai was remote, mountainous, and traditionally independent-minded. The provincial authorities were less vigilant. August 1946, purchase of mountain property and construction of the villa. Nakamura paid a Thai intermediary to handle the transaction, never meeting the sellers directly. Construction was done by local laborers who knew only that the Japanese merchant wanted a private mountain retreat. In isolated rural Thailand, eccentric wealthy foreigners were unusual but not unheard of. The workers built what they were told to build, accepted payment, and asked no questions. The villa's design was telling. It was not a luxurious estate but a fortified hideaway. The walls were reinforced concrete, 40 centimeters thick. The windows were small and positioned high, making external surveillance difficult. There was a hidden basement chamber, accessed through a concealed floor hatch, where Nakamura stored his remaining gold reserves and important documents. The location itself, deep in mountainous terrain, accessible only by a difficult mountain path, provided natural security. Most remarkably, Nakamura had planned for eventual discovery. In the hidden basement, investigators found a metal box containing a complete written confession, dated March 3, 1951. The document, 23 pages in careful Japanese calligraphy, provided a full accounting of his escape, his motivations, and his remorse. The final paragraph read, "Whoever finds this, I want you to know I was not a war criminal. I committed no atrocities. I simply did not want to die in a meaningless final stand. I wanted to see my daughters grow up, even from a distance. I wanted to live. Is that so terrible? History will judge me. I cannot defend myself anymore. I am old, I am tired, and I am alone. The gold is gone. The empire is gone. Everything is gone. All I have left is this confession and the hope that someday, someone will understand why I did what I did." The confession was dated 1951, but the journal entries continued until late 1951, then stopped abruptly. What happened after that would require further investigation. May 15, 2024, interview with Nuran Pradeep, Chiang Mai. The breakthrough in understanding Nakamura's final years came from an unexpected source. Nuran Pradeep, 88 years old, was the father of Samchai Pradeep, the construction worker whose excavator had uncovered the villa. Nuran had grown up in a village 5 kilometers from the hidden villa site. When investigators showed him photographs of Takeshi Watanabe, Nuran's eyes widened. "I know this man. We called him the Japanese hermit. He lived in the mountains. We saw him occasionally when he came to the village for supplies." According to Nuran's testimony, Watanabe had been a familiar but mysterious figure in the region from approximately 1946 to the mid-1950s. He spoke broken Thai with a heavy accent, paid in gold coins for rice and supplies, and kept entirely to himself. The villagers assumed he was a Japanese merchant who had chosen to retreat from the world after the war. Such figures were not entirely uncommon in post-war Southeast Asia, people broken by the war, seeking isolation and peace. But there was a woman, Nuran continued. A Thai woman named Samchai. Yes, same name as my son, very common name. She went to live with the Japanese man sometime around 1948 or 1949. She brought 2 children from a previous marriage. We rarely saw them after that. This matched the photographs found in the villa showing Nakamura with a Thai woman and 2 children. Further investigation revealed records of a woman named Samchai Prathamtong, born 1920, widowed in 1947 when her husband died in a farming accident. She had 2 daughters, ages 6 and 3. Thai provincial records showed that Samchai Prathamtong left her village in early 1948 and was not seen again by her extended family. This had caused some concern at the time, but authorities made little effort to investigate. In rural Thailand in the 1940s, people sometimes disappeared or moved away. Life was hard, and record-keeping was imperfect. A journal entry from December 1948 provided Nakamura's perspective. "Samchai agreed to share this exile with me. She knows I am hiding from something. She has asked no questions. Her daughters are sweet children, 7 and 4 years old. I will never be their real father, but I can protect them, provide for them. Samchai understands loneliness. Her husband died last year. We are both seeking something. She, security, me, redemption through simple human connection. Perhaps it is possible to build something good from so much deception." The relationship appeared genuine. Later journal entries described teaching the children basic Japanese phrases, helping repair the roof during monsoon season, and celebrating Thai holidays. In March 1950, Nakamura wrote, "Today is Samchai's birthday. She is 30 years old. I am 52. I feel ancient. But when I see her smile, when the children laugh, I remember what it means to be human rather than just a ghost of a general." But this fragile domestic peace could not last forever. May 20, 2024. Medical records discovery, Chiang Mai Provincial Hospital. researchers examining hospital archives found a significant clue: admission records from November 1951 for a patient listed as Takeshi Watanabe, male, 53 years, Japanese national. The diagnosis was pneumonia severe. The patient was admitted on November 8 and remained hospitalized for 3 weeks. He was discharged on November 28, 1951, against medical advice, condition serious. The discharge notes included a grim prognosis. Patient has refused further treatment. Pneumonia has progressed to chronic stage. Without continued care, patient unlikely to survive more than 6-12 months. This explained why the journal entries ended abruptly in late 1951. Nakamura was dying. But what happened next was unclear. The villa appeared to have been deliberately sealed. The entrance was professionally concealed with poured concrete, the interior left largely intact, as though someone had intentionally preserved it as a time capsule. Local records provided a tantalizing clue. In January 1952, a property transaction was registered in Chiang Mai. The land containing the villa was sold to a Thai family named Prathamthom, Somcha's birth family, by an intermediary acting on behalf of an anonymous Japanese benefactor. The price paid was substantial: 80,000 Thai baht, roughly equivalent to 8 kilograms of gold at 1952 exchange rates. The implication was clear. Nakamura, knowing he was dying, had arranged to transfer the property to Somchai's family, providing for her and her daughters after his death. He had used his remaining gold reserves to ensure they would be financially secure. But where did he die, and where was he buried? May 25, 2024, discovery at Wat Doi Suthep. Following up on journal references to the Eastern Temple, investigators visited Wat Doi Suthep, a Buddhist temple approximately 12 kilometers from the villa site. The temple's records, maintained by generations of monks, included a burial registry. In the 1952 entries they found, Takeshi Watanabe, Japanese, died February 14, 1952, age 53, cremated according to Buddhist rites, ashes interred in Memorial Garden. The abbot, Fra Ajahn Somchai Dhammakari, a different Somchai, age 71, remembered stories told by his predecessor. The old abbot spoke of a Japanese man who came to the temple in late 1951. He was very ill. He made substantial donations to the temple and asked to be allowed to spend his final days here in meditation and prayer. The abbot agreed. The man died in February 1952. A Thai woman and 2 children attended his cremation. In the temple's memorial garden, investigators found a small stone marker, weathered by 72 years of tropical weather. The inscription read simply, Takeshi Watanabe, 1898-1952, may he find peace. But beneath this stone, there was another surprise. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a metal container buried 1.2 meters below the surface. With the temple's permission, investigators carefully excavated the site on May 27, 2024. The container was a sealed military-grade ammunition box. Inside was a package wrapped in oiled cloth, preserved against moisture. The package contained a photograph of Nakamura in his general's uniform, taken circa 1944, his original military identification papers and medals, a letter addressed to his daughters, written in January 1952, a Buddhist prayer scroll, a small amount of ashes, presumably Nakamura's remains. The letter to his daughters was the most emotionally wrenching find. Written in a shaky hand by a dying man, it ran to 12 pages. Excerpts read, Keiko Sachiko, by the time this is found, if it is ever found, you will be old women, or perhaps you too will have died. I pray you lived good lives, married good men, had children of your own. I watched you from the shadows for a few years after the war, but it became too painful. How do you explain to a daughter that her father faked his death and fled like a coward? I have tried to live a good life in my exile. I hurt no one here. I helped where I could. In my final year, I found a measure of peace with a Thai woman named Somchai and her daughters. They gave me a reason to be human again. I die now not as General Nakamura, war leader, but as Takeshi Watanabe, a man who tried to leave the war behind. I do not know which identity is more true. Perhaps I am both. Perhaps I am neither. If there is judgment after death, and as I approach it I find myself believing there must be, I will answer for my choices. I abandoned my post. I deceived everyone. But I also survived when survival seemed impossible, and I tried to do good with the years I stole from death. My greatest regret is not being your father when you needed one. For that, I am truly sorry. I hope somehow, someday, you forgive me. I loved you both more than life itself. That was why I chose to live, so that in some small way, even unseen, I could watch over you. Your father, who should have died in Okinawa, but lived to die an old man in Thailand. When Hiroshi Tanaka, Nakamura's grandson, read this letter in June 2024, he wept. In an interview, he said, "My mother never stopped mourning him. She visited his memorial every year for 50 years. If she had known he was alive, could she have forgiven him? I don't know, but I think she would have wanted the choice." The discovery of General Nakamura's survival created profound ethical and historical debates that played out across academic journals, news media, and public discourse throughout the summer of 2024. At the heart of the debate was a fundamental question. Was Nakamura's escape a morally defensible act of survival or an inexcusable dereliction of duty? Professor Takeshi Ishikawa, a military historian at Waseda University, argued the former position in a June 2024 essay. We must understand the context. By June 1945, the Battle of Okinawa was unquestionably lost. Nakamura's death would have accomplished nothing militarily. The emperor himself would surrender within 2 months. Nakamura's choice to survive rather than participate in a meaningless final stand was rational. We should not romanticize suicide as honor. He had daughters who needed him, or at least his memory. His escape harmed no one. But others disagreed strongly. Professor Yuki Matsumoto, a specialist in military ethics at the National Defense Academy, countered. Nakamura was a general officer. He bore responsibility not just for himself but for thousands of men under his command. By staging his death and escaping, he abandoned those men to die while he fled to safety. That is the definition of cowardice and betrayal of command responsibility. The fact that the battle was lost is irrelevant. A leader stays with his troops until the end. That is the most basic principle of military honor. The international community viewed the case through the lens of war crimes and justice. Dr. Eliza Thornton, a researcher at the International Criminal Court, noted in a July 2024 analysis, "The critical question is whether Nakamura committed prosecutable war crimes. Based on available evidence, he did not. His actions as a military commander were consistent with conventional warfare of the era. Civilian casualties occurred in his area of operations, but there is no evidence of deliberate atrocities or violations of the laws of war as understood at the time. Therefore, while his escape was legally problematic, effectively desertion, he was not a war criminal fleeing justice like many Nazi officers who used similar escape networks." This distinction mattered. The case of General Nakamura was fundamentally different from, say, Adolf Eichmann or Joseph Mengele, war criminals who fled to escape prosecution for specific, documented atrocities. Nakamura was fleeing the shame of defeat and the likely hardship of post-war Japan, not accountability for mass murder. Yet the comparison to other escape networks was inevitable. The discovery prompted renewed investigation into the full scope of post-war Japanese military escape routes. Researchers estimated that between 300 and 500 Japanese military personnel, officers and enlisted men, successfully evaded repatriation and disappeared into Southeast Asia, China, or South America between 1945 and 1950. Some of these individuals were war criminals. Colonel Masanobu Tsukada, for example, who had commanded a unit involved in the Bataan Death March, disappeared in 1946 and was never prosecuted. Evidence suggested he lived in Indonesia under a false name until his death in 1971. Unlike Nakamura, Tsukada was directly responsible for war crimes, yet he escaped justice entirely. This raised uncomfortable questions about the effectiveness of post-war justice systems. The Allied war crimes tribunals, while important, prosecuted only a fraction of those responsible for atrocities. Resource limitations, political considerations, and the sheer chaos of post-war Asia meant many guilty parties were never held accountable. The victim's perspective could not be ignored. Organizations representing victims of Japanese wartime aggression issued statements condemning the glorification of Nakamura's escape. A statement from the Alliance for Preserving the Truth of Sino-Japanese War read, "Every Japanese officer who escaped justice is an insult to the millions who suffered under Japanese occupation. Whether or not General Nakamura personally committed atrocities is beside the point. He was part of a military machine that caused immense suffering. His comfortable escape to Thailand, while his victims struggled to rebuild their lives, is morally indefensible." This criticism was valid and important. War is not an adventure story. Real people died, military personnel and civilians alike. Nakamura's escape might be fascinating from a historical and human interest perspective, but it must not be romanticized. Yet there was also a human element that could not be dismissed. Nakamura's letters revealed genuine remorse, not for escaping, but for abandoning his daughters. His life in Thailand appeared to have been one of quiet isolation, not luxury or triumph. He had not reveled in his survival but had lived as a ghost, haunted by his choices. Dr. Anjali Sirasawat, whose team discovered the villa, offered perhaps the most balanced perspective in an August 2024 lecture. General Nakamura was neither hero nor monster. He was a human being faced with an impossible choice: certain death in a lost cause, or survival through deception and betrayal of principle. He chose survival, and he lived with the consequences for the rest of his life. We can acknowledge the fascinating nature of his escape, while still condemning the circumstances that made such escapes possible. The brutality of total war, the culture of military honor that demanded death over surrender, and the failures of justice systems that allowed war criminals to escape unpunished. The Nakamura case also prompted reflection on the concept of historical accountability. How long should a person be held responsible for wartime actions? Is there a statute of limitations on moral judgment? Nakamura died in 1952, 72 years before his story came to light. Everyone who knew him as a general was dead. His daughters had died never knowing he survived. What purpose did exposing his deception serve now? Some argued that historical truth was its own justification. We should know what actually happened, regardless of contemporary consequences. Others contended that reopening old wounds served no one. Nakamura's grandson, who had believed his grandfather died honorably, now had to grapple with a more complicated legacy. In September 2024, a symposium at Kyoto University brought together historians, ethicists, and family members to discuss the case. The consensus, if one existed, was that Nakamura's story served as a reminder of war's moral complexity. It was easy to make clear judgments in hindsight, much harder to know what one would do facing the same choices. As Professor Ishikawa observed in his closing remarks, "We sit in comfortable conference rooms 79 years later, passing judgment on a man who faced death in a cave in Okinawa. It is right that we think critically about his choices, but we should also recognize that war creates impossible situations where every choice is wrong in some way. Nakamura chose survival and self-interest over duty and honor. He lived with that choice, and judging by his letters, it gave him little peace. Perhaps that is punishment enough." October 15, 2024, the Nakamura Memorial Site Doi Suthep National Park, Thailand. The hidden villa has been carefully preserved as a historical site. The Thai government, in cooperation with Japanese historical organizations and international scholars, decided that the site should serve as a memorial and educational center, not a celebration of General Nakamura's escape, but a reflection on the complexities of war, survival, and accountability. Visitors approach via a newly constructed path that winds up the mountain. The entrance to the villa has been partially opened, with reinforced supports installed to prevent collapse while maintaining the original structure's integrity. Inside, the rooms are preserved exactly as they were found. The writing desk with its journal, the simple furniture, the photographs on the walls. Informational panels in Thai, Japanese, and English provide historical context. They do not lionize Nakamura but present his story factually, alongside information about the Battle of Okinawa, the collapse of Imperial Japan, and the post-war escape networks. One panel displays the letter he wrote to his daughters, with translations. Another shows photographs of the actual historical figures: Takeshi Nakamura in his general's uniform, his daughters Keiko and Sachiko, the Thai woman Somchai Prathamtong. In a small adjacent building, researchers have created an archive of documents related to the case. The forensic analysis reports, the translated journal entries, the banking records, the letters. Scholars can request access to study the materials. The goal is not to hide difficult truths, but to make them available for honest examination. On the day of the memorial's official opening, October 15, 2024, approximately 200 people attended. Among them was Hiroshi Tanaka, Nakamura's grandson, now 62 years old. He stood before the villa, tears streaming down his face, holding a photograph of his mother Keiko as a young woman. "My mother never knew her father survived," he said in a brief speech. "She mourned him every day of her life. I am angry about that, angry that he deprived her of the truth, but I also understand now how impossible his situation was. He could not come back. Returning would have destroyed his daughter's memory of him and brought shame upon them. So he stayed hidden and he suffered alone. I forgive him. I wish my mother could have had that chance." Also present was 88-year-old Nuran Pradip, the villager who remembered the Japanese hermit. He placed flowers at a small shrine established near the villa. "He was a quiet man," Nuran told reporters. "He harmed no one here. He lived simply and died peacefully. Whatever he did before, he tried to make peace with it. That is all any of us can do." Representatives from the Japanese Ministry of Defense attended, as did scholars from Okinawa. The mayor of Chiang Mai gave a speech about the importance of remembering history honestly, even when that history is complicated and uncomfortable. But perhaps the most poignant moment came when a group of descendants of Okinawa battle survivors laid a wreath at the entrance to the villa. Their message was complex, acknowledging Nakamura's escape while remembering the thousands who did not escape, who died in the caves and beaches of Okinawa in June 1945. One of them, 77-year-old Kenji Shimabukuro, whose grandfather died in the same battle where Nakamura allegedly fell, spoke carefully. "I do not hate General Nakamura. How can I hate a ghost? But I remember that my grandfather, a simple private, had no possibility of escape. He died at 24 years old, leaving a widow and infant son. There were thousands like him. Nakamura had the resources, the connections, and the position to save himself. Others did not. That is not fair, but war is not fair. We remember them all, those who died and those who found a way to live." As the ceremony concluded and visitors began touring the site, the sun set behind the Thai mountains, casting long shadows across the valley. Inside the villa, in the room where Takeshi Nakamura spent his final years, the last light of day illuminated his writing desk. The journal still lay open to its final entry, dated November 15, 1951. "I am tired. The illness takes more of me each day. Soon I will be with Yuki and Akira again if there is an afterlife, if they can forgive me. I have no regrets about surviving. Life is precious, but I regret the cost, the deception, the abandonment, the shame I would have brought upon my daughters had they known. Perhaps it was selfish. Perhaps it was cowardice. But I lived. I saw my daughters marry. I found a measure of peace in my exile. When I close my eyes for the last time, I will remember not the general I was, but the man I tried to become. Is that redemption? I do not know, but it is all I have. The mountains of northern Thailand kept General Nakamura's secret for 79 years. The earth itself became his accomplice, covering his tracks with soil and vegetation, sealing his villa behind concrete and time. How many other secrets do the mountains hold? How many other stories remain buried, waiting for a construction crew's excavator or a researcher's curious inquiry? We like to believe that history eventually reveals all truths, that the passage of time brings clarity and understanding. But Nakamura's case reminds us that history is written by those who survive to tell it, and sometimes those survivors choose silence. For every secret uncovered, how many remain hidden? For every dramatic escape revealed, how many others succeeded so perfectly that we will never know they occurred? The earth keeps its secrets well, sometimes for 79 years, sometimes forever. What we choose to do with the secrets we discover, whether to judge, to understand, or to learn, defines not just our understanding of history, but our own humanity. General Takeshi Nakamura escaped death in Okinawa, but he could not escape himself. Perhaps none of us can. Perhaps that is the final lesson of his remarkable, troubling, and profoundly human story.